Hello and welcome. If you are a sneaker enthusiast, you should be already familiar with Foot Locker. For those unaware, Foot Locker is the New York-based sneaker and sportswear retailer. Globally, it has over 2,700 retail stores spanning 29 countries, including the US, Asia, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. In Asia and Middle East, the company has franchisee-led presence. The brand is also famous for its employees' uniforms with black and white stripes that resemble those of the referees. On Wednesday, Foot Locker said it will enter India next year. It has struck a long-term licensing agreement with Metro Brands Limited, which is one of India's largest footwear and accessories specialty retailer, and Nike Fashion, an e-commerce retailer. While Metro will have the exclusive rights to own and operate Foot Locker stores, Nike Fashion will serve as the exclusive e-commerce partner to sell its merchandise online. I am joined by Metro Brand CEO Nissan Joseph to talk more about the brand and its plans to bring Foot Locker to India. Good morning and thank you, Mr. Joseph, for talking to us. I would like to begin by asking, when do we have a timeline? When is Foot Locker coming in India?
Sesa, good morning, and thank you for having me here. We are looking probably at Q3, fiscal Q3 of next year, to start the launch of Foot Locker. We want to launch with about 2 to 6 stores in probably 2 cities because we want to start and build a base, and that's how you typically build most retail brands in any country.
Right. What is likely to be the price points? Like, will it be a premium range or will it be a luxury kind of range? If you can just help us understand what kind of price points will Foot Locker cater to?
Yeah, so Foot Locker is absolutely a premium branded sneaker place globally, right? And we would plan on having the same price positioning here in India for that brand. I wouldn't call it luxury. There are items that we call collaborations, that sneak up pretty high in price. But those are exceptions more than they're the norm. But the norm is a premium category sneaker play.
Okay. And what kind of investments will you be actually putting into the brand maybe over the next 2 to 3 years? And you did mention about 2 stores to begin with, but do you also have a long-term plan in terms of store rollout?
Yeah. So I actually mentioned 2 to 6 stores to start with, right?
Okay.
And this is a multi-decade agreement that we have with Foot Locker. And, we are really trying to position the brand as the Indian consumer grows, the Indian sneaker consumer grows, and it's still embryonic in India, but it's rapidly growing today. As that grows, we want to ensure that we are positioning Foot Locker today to be able to capitalize on the growth of that sneaker consumer in India for many, many years to come, right? And everything we do at Metro is done with a very long-term perspective, and this would be no exception to that. It's almost impossible for us to foresee where India will be in 10 years. The predictions are so aggressive out there that it's hard to believe some of those projections at times. However, what we want to make sure is that we position the brand, invest in the brand, and make sure that it is positioned to take advantage of that as and when India grows.
So potentially, what kind of revenue will this brand generate? Do you have a tentative figure to share with us?
Well, I think it's premature for me to share forward-looking numbers of that nature. However, what I will tell you is that the average Foot Locker store does produce 1.5 to 2 times what our average stores do, right? Now, they're also considerably larger in size, but that's not the point. The point is there is that kind of velocity, there is that kind of demand for these kind of products in India. And, we see this being not cannibalistic to our business. So say if you look at our business of Metro, Mochi, Walkway, Crocs, and FitFlop, Foot Locker caters to an absolutely different type of consumer with different type of goods, right? So we don't see this as being cannibalistic, which is wonderful. On the other hand, it exposes us to a whole different genre of consumers in India that we know is growing. Today they get their products globally. Pretty soon they'll have that chance to get it domestically.
Right. So Crocs and Skechers, they are the other American brands. So how has been your experience with the American brands, if you can share with us?
I think it's wonderful to see that as India globalizes, that it's not so much that it's American, that I would say it's more that it's on trend, right? So
Mhm.
these two brands are on trend. Crocs and Skechers are definitely doing very well for us in India here, but they're really on trend product, right? They're on trend brands. And what this shows is the Indian consumer is well connected globally and it understands what's happening in that space, albeit they're a different consumer, right? Crocs consumer is slightly different than a sneakerhead consumer, for example, right? But it does show the global connectivity of India more than it shows necessarily just an American-centric way of thinking. So we're very excited that Foot Locker gives us that opportunities because they have partnerships with multiple brands across themselves, and that we will now have access to bring a lot of those into India.
So a lot of those or all of those, like, are we going to see all of those making an inroads in India?
Well, I think it's a matter of balancing demand as well, right? So brands that are typically, for example, very heavily winter driven, and a good one would be Uggs, for example, right? Uggs does very well at Foot Locker as it does globally. That would be not as much of a needed item here because it's definitely cold weather item. Not saying that our stores in the north couldn't use it, but wouldn't have the same traction in the south for sure, right? So there will be some regional nuances, geographic and climatic nuances that prevent us to get everything, but it might also mean that we over-index in some other brands that cater to those markets.
All right. So, Mr. Nissan, what I do believe is that, Metro is kind of growing as a house of brands kind of a thing. You have been acquiring a lot of brands over the last few years. So, will this be a strategy that you would be consciously focusing on, or will you also introduce any in-house labels or maybe, something which is not acquired?
Yeah. What we try to do fundamentally is work customer backwards. So it's not so much that we want to acquire brands as the driver of it. What we want to do is acquire the customer's wardrobe, right? In footwear, right? And we're very focused on that. So what we do is work customer backwards. So if a customer is starting to pivot towards sneakers, like they've done over the last 5 years in India, they've been doing it for many years globally, but in the last 5 years that has caught on in India, we're going to pivot with the customer. So it's not so much about, oh, we need to go acquire brands. It's more about our customer wants us to provide them with the opportunity to shop for global brands right here in India. And that's our prime focus. The other thing we also look at is, how does that fit in our portfolio? We don't like things that are cannibalistic to each other. We don't like to do a lot of duplicative things. And we also want to have best-in-class brands, right? So we want to be a little selective when it comes to that. So it is really a multitude of strategies and vectors that we use as we decide what that next brand or that banner is. Today in our Metro and Mochi stores, we sell 70% of the goods that are under our own label, which is Metro or Mochi, or in the individual cases, they also have J. Fontini and Da Vinci brands, right? We will continue to invest in those because the Indian consumer has shown a deep affinity and trust in those brands that we want to continue to build on. At the same time, we know that you could have a range of shoes that caters to a totally different genre or a wearing occasion, right? So we're not a athletic technical footwear company today, right? As Metro and Mochi. We sell some very good technical walking and running shoes from Skechers, but that doesn't mean we're that person. We want to make sure that we give products that are meaningful to a consumer more than it is about acquiring brands. So wherever that journey takes us. But if you look at what we've done recently, we started selling more and more athletic shoes in our Metro Mochi stores. We sell about 10 to 15% of our sales come from pure athletic footwear. We then, as you know, last year acquired Fila, which starts to also get us more deeper and then more well entrenched into the athletic space. And then, of course, now with Foot Locker, you can see this is a journey towards ensuring that we can capture that casual sneaker lifestyle category, right? So it's a really well thought out journey as opposed to opportunistic journey, right? It really is focused on the consumer.
All right. Now, just, talking about the overall brand and not just Foot Locker or any other brands in particular, I would like to know how has been the demand, because we did speak, post Q2 when you did say that the current slowdown was kind of a temporary phenomenon and nothing related to the macro headwinds that we are seeing. You have been very bullish on the demand. So as we speak, the festivals are also over. So how was the demand on ground? If you can throw some light, and also with the wedding season upcoming, what are your forecasts? What are your demand forecasts?
Yeah, so I like how you said the festival season is over. This is India. The festival never stops. Party never stops in India, right? No, and like you rightly said, we go right from this into the wedding season. December has considerably more dates of weddings than it did last year. We've seen reports that there's going to be 20% more weddings in the December season than there was last year. Having said all that, though, Sesa, we are still going against the COVID bump from last year, right? We had a magnificent COVID bump with a lot of pent-up buying and demand that came through. And that bump will continue. We will continue to go into that bump, probably into Q4. Then that's how we see our business. And we're not saying that from in any way being disappointed about the economy. On the contrary, we're quite positive because us maintaining numbers close to that bump is a sign that the economy is actually incredibly stronger than it was in 2019 when we went into COVID, as you know, right? So our indications are these are headwinds of temporary, trend corrections in terms of demand trends, but not necessarily trends of macro conditions of economics and things like that. So if you're planning your business right, you will know that last year that the numbers were tremendous with the COVID bump that we had. And in fact, I think a lot of people overestimated that would continue. And that's why you see inflated inventories across multiple channels. And I'm not just talking India, by the way, I'm talking globally. There are inflated levels of inventory. And we, on the contrary, understood that and weren't quite as bullish on the growth, but we continue to be very bullish on the economy because we don't see those two as being connected. Though in normal business, that would be the single way you connect it is what's your demand look like, and that's a reflection of the economy. Well, today's demand is not the way you measure it simply because, and I can't say it enough, because we are going against the COVID bump and we're lapping it, but it starts to peter down in Q4.
Got it. And lastly, I would like to know, are these Foot Locker, shoes, will this be manufactured here or will this be imported? Also, as an overall category, I would like to know for the shoes, for all your brands, what is the share of imports at the moment?
So prior to Foot Locker coming into the picture, and we still don't have any stores of Foot Locker, but we manufactured 85% of our shoes right here in India. There was 15% that we imported of our own brands. Right now, obviously, Skechers has a different mix and Crocs has a different mix. Crocs was almost 100% imported, right? So those are different mixes. When it comes to Foot Locker, I think what you're going to see definitely is a much different mix of production, right? Different brands produce globally in different countries. So to say that, it would be highly India production based would be a little bit speculative. Having said that, though, thanks to the BIS rules and norms that we have coming in, we've seen significant investments into footwear manufacturing in the Indian economy, right? And investments both from the private sector, but also from the government and PLI. So that's very encouraging for us because in the long term, footwear production is going to be quite well developed in India, though these things do take time to happen. They don't happen overnight, but we see the opportunity. We see that the pillars are in place for the footwear development cycle to be fully handled in India.
All right. On that note, thank you so much for speaking to us. It was a pleasure talking to you. We already see see a new Foot Locker